I'll stay here.
That's right.
I think I will.
Hello, and welcome to the gallery talk and reception for the exhibition Showman with a Paintbrush, The Life and Art of Arthur D. Diehl. I'm Benton Jones, I'm the Director of Art here at the Cape Cod Museum of Art, and we'll take some time this afternoon to walk around this exhibition with curator Gina Del Pell, and hopefully answer some of your questions. I'd like to thank my staff team, namely Joyce Bromer, who helped, and Eric Estresbeck, who helped in almost every step of the promotion and educational programs associated with this exhibition, and our registrar, Yana Jones, who administered the wall text and traveled to PAM, the Provincetown Art Association and Museum, and Bow, New Hampshire to pick up paintings. I'd also like to thank the volunteers, Steve Pertuska and Gary Ergonsky, for helping to hang the artwork. A special thank you to our exhibition sponsor, Eldred Auctioneers, who shares in the mutual love for Arthur Diehl's talent and artistry. It is their support of the museum and community that enables us to bring exhibitions at this high level to you. Their sponsorship provides us the opportunity to tell this important story so relevant to Cape Cod and its history. Thank you. The seeds of this exhibition were planned over 2 years ago when Cindy Nickerson, the former acting executive director of this museum, contacted me to let me know she was helping to edit the definitive biography of Arthur D. Diehl. This beautiful publication was, at the time, being written by Eugenia Diehl Pell, granddaughter of Arthur Diehl. We all got together, Jeannie Pell, her son, Clay Pell, her partner, Paul Moore, Cindy Nickerson, and myself, and to begin to imagine what a Diehl exhibition might look like here. It would be an involved labor of love, to say the least, as there were many obstacles to overcome. Most of the artwork was in Tucson, Arizona, where Jeannie lives. Some paintings needed conservation, framing, photographing, and the Diehl biography still needed to be completed and published. Jeannie even painted her walls the color of this gallery to get the full immersive experience that would then be transported here, magically. A little about Arthur Diehl. Arthur Diehl was born in London and immigrated to the United States in 1893 when he was 20. For much of his career, he lived in Provincetown with a studio on Commercial Street near the center of town, where he painted Old World and New World landscapes. Diehl's Old World subjects included scenes from Italy, Morocco, England, and the Netherlands. His subjects in the United States include Cape Cod, Boston, St. Augustine, Florida, and New York City. He was a master studio artist who is best known for his marine scenes, but as Jeannie pointed out, with the exception of still lifes, Arthur Diehl painted from memory. Unbelievable, right? He would often do this with crowds of onlookers gobsmacked by his genius, speed, and visual memory, as a masterwork emerged before their eyes. His deep understanding of boats, their rigging, and how they operated on the open sea provide us today with a glimpse into the Provincetown of yesteryears, in the 1920s, when fishing was done by schooners and small dories launched from those schooners. We wanted to capture all these important details in this exhibition and in the biography. Congratulations, Eugenia Pell, for delivering on all the facets of your vision. Arthur Diehl's legacy is now indelible and secure as a result of your dedication, so much so that the American Art Review has published a 6-page article on this exhibition in their most recent issue. Besides being the historian and author of Arthur Diehl's biography, Eugenia Pell is an artist herself. A graduate of RISD, Jeannie works across media to represent beauty and emotion in landscape, portrait, and still life. She has spent 40 years in substantial study and restoration of works by her late grandfather, Arthur Diehl. And she has also done this for her great-grandmother, Mary Spartiali Stillman, another important artist in her family, and a rare female British member of the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood in the mid-1850s. But that's another story, and possibly another exhibition. Please join me in welcoming Vidal Diehl.
Oh, I don't know how loud I should talk. Is that okay, or should it be louder? Well, this is a great turnout. Thank you so much for coming, all of you. And I want to thank a few people that have made this possible, and without them, it wouldn't have been possible. First of all, I'd just like to take a second to thank my Heavenly Father, who without him, I would have never been able to put this together. And I realized that I didn't put it together, he did. And that's, I'm really heartfelt with that. I'd also like to thank the museum. The Cape Cod Museum of Art has just bent over backwards to be very ingratiating and helpful. And look what they've done. It's great. Cindy Nickerson, I believe, is in there. She's been working on Diehl's life for many years with her own show at the Cahoon Museum in 2007, which I helped her with, but she's been working for at least 2 years on this project. My right-hand man, who is my husband, Paul Moore, is, you wouldn't even begin to believe the work that he's put in. It's not even humanly possible. The hours that he spent, a lot of them in front of a computer doing Photoshop to correct all the images where they were off in color or any other way. It's unbelievable. So thank you, Paul. Some other special people. My son Clay, who's been working on this for about 30 years. He's been typing since he was 10, with big breaks for other projects that he's been involved in, but he's always been there. Christy Tell, my daughter, and I'm the granddaughter of Arthur Diehl, so she's the great-granddaughter, and 3 of her children are here, including a great-great-granddaughter, and a cute little son does. Gary Scoveland, he has been so supportive and helpful for a few years. We met over the internet. We met because he owns an Arthur Diehl painting, but he's been so helpful. Keith Richards, I just met yesterday, but I've known him over the course of this show. Built the model, which he then donated to the Cape Cod Maritime Museum, where he is a docent. And he's here tonight. And the grandson of the captain of that Henry Franklin model is also here. So we have many grandsons and granddaughters of these people. So now I suppose what I am going to do is just kind of walk around the gallery. We started over here on this wall with the kind of mostly European scenes, the older paintings. Arthur Diehl was born in 1870, and that was just about the time that the Barbizon movement was really starting in France. And so he grew up seeing the Barbizon painting, which the whole movement went out to the woods near Fontainebleau, France, and they were distressed with all that was going on in the world, and they just wanted a glimpse of nature. And so this wall we have the older paintings, the oldest paintings that I have, and the show is, those are European scenes over there too, but you can tell the difference. The darker, more somber colors. A lot of that was due to the ground that the artists used in those days. They usually put a dark ground on the things, and then later the Impressionists started putting a light ground so that the light really radiated through the canvas, through the paints to the viewer. So this is the oldest painting I have. I did it in 1897. Yeah, 1897. And he remembered that scene. See, he went to Italy when he was 15. And he studied with Luigi Stefani in Milan for 2 years, and he traveled around different places in Europe. But he didn't paint that painting until he'd been in America for about 5 years. He decided that he would up and leave England and leave his family, who was very supportive. They were all musicians, and he had a lot of cultural support. And he decided to leave that and come to America, which a lot of other people did too, but he found it very impossible to make a living. And he ended up having to work for a dealer who sold copies of paintings. Unfortunately, he sold them as originals, which, not up and up, but my grandfather knew he didn't actually ever have to copy the paintings because he had studied in museums copying masters for so many years that all they had to do was come up with the scene in his mind and paint it, even back then, even when he was quite young. So he never really copied the paintings, but he signed them with brush names because he had to. I mean, he had to put other names on them. But there's an old saying that Corot, there's 3,000 paintings of Corot, 5,000 of which there were 2,000 extra Corots because people copied them. So it wasn't anything new. It was going on for a long time. So then moving on to this wall, it's more of the sunny Mediterranean in Italy and Morocco. But again, he saw these scenes when he was 15 to 17 and painted them many years later. 1927 was the year before he died, or 2 years before he died. So from the time that he was 15, he remembered these scenes, and it's not a very usual talent. It's very unusual. But I love the sunny colors of the stucco walls and the brash oranges of the heat that show the exoticism of the land that most people couldn't ever get to. People, armchair collectors, as they say, would love to see these places and would love to have a painting on their wall, but they couldn't go there. So my grandfather was able to give them something that they could hang on their wall to help them in their quest for being able to see other places. And he sold paintings from anywhere from $1 to $300, anywhere from an inch by an inch to maybe 4 by 6. And really was able to, his goal in life was to provide real art, what he called real art, for people, anybody who wanted it. And he had a painting and a price for anybody who would want to buy it. And he probably gave away a lot of paintings too. So then he decides to come to New York and got on an ocean liner like that. And then he saw, you can see the colors, how they changed from the darker browns to the bright Mediterranean colors and then to the blues of New England. And they're so detailed. I mean, you can see the Statue of Liberty and the portholes. You can see everything, the atmosphere. And the way he made the atmosphere, he told Hale Whitcomb, who bought one of his paintings, he says, "What's missing? The painting isn't quite finished yet. What's missing?" And Hale didn't know what was missing. He said, "Atmosphere, atmosphere." And he had a little atomizer, like a little perfume thing, with the ball and he squeezed it. And I guess he must have had turpentine and blue paint in it. And he squeezed it, and he squeezed it a couple of times. And he says, "Atmosphere, now the painting is finished." And I think it blended the colors together a little bit. And another scene from New York. And then we move over here, which, can anybody guess what this is? I guess you can. Anybody want to take a stab at what this wall represents? It's really easy. Sorry. Yeah. It's really easy. Well, it's a recreation of the studio. In Provincetown, he had a little tiny studio which was in this painting. But this painting up here is the third building from the right. From the right was his studio, and it was only 10 by 15 feet. And he had paintings just jammed in there because he painted them so fast. He could paint 15 paintings in a day. So an hour each, something like that. And he had time-saving techniques because he had to paint fast, because he couldn't charge a lot. And he just had to make a decent living. So we have an easel like his, and some of the actual things, these Turkish rugs that he had in his studio. And that's probably the last painting, not one of the very last paintings he ever did. When you get a chance, look at it. It's very expressionistic. It's not very detailed. And I think he got into that blue color, that particular blue, when he was getting older. And it was very sparse. I mean, it's not very detailed. I think it was one of his last. And he just loved Provincetown. Everything. He loved Provincetown. He loved the, well, even though it was only a summer colony, now it's year-round, but it was only, obviously the fishermen were there now, but he wasn't there in the summer, in the winters. He was only there in the summers. And he just loved all the activity of the tourists. Well, he made his money with tourists. He had nothing against tourists. He loved the fishing people. He loved everybody. He dealt with the hardware store. He dealt with Higgins lumber. He had stretchers made from them. And he went to Silver's drugstore. And I mean, he dealt with all the people. And he had his own doctors there. And, he just loved it. He walked on a bounce in his step and was out meeting people and painting from about 9 in the morning to about 11 at night when he was young. And so this is his studio, and it's kind of it's not any one place or period. There are a lot of Provincetown scenes in it, but there's Holland, there's Naples, there's a flapper, there's another kind of Barbizon painting in the barn, a typical subject that the Barbizon painters did. There's battleships from the war, farm scene here. His teacher in Italy painted scenes very much like this farm scene, but he was older, so his paintings were more realistic. Here's a little chart of what the paintings are, the titles over here. But starting here, this is Provincetown, this is Cape Cod, this is at its best. Sand dunes, boats, sailboats, yachts, boat yards. It's been a real interesting project, getting these things cleaned, and there wasn't too much in-painting that needed to be done. It was just cleaning, get rid of some of the old varnish, new frames. It's been a fun project. This is painting he did for his wife. She said, I don't even have one sunny sand in yours. So he painted it, titled it Sunny Sand, and gave it to her. This painting is interesting because it's one of the worst of the Provincetown, but I don't know which one. But it's very green gas. And at first we weren't even thinking of putting it in the show. But after it was cleaned and framed, it just looked so wonderful that we put it in.
I'm sorry, it's
And he was a master of the sea, any kind of sea. You can see that one there, the open ocean, the deep rolling waves, and the breaking waves. I've never seen paintings of the sea. You see a lot of paintings of the sea, but these are so realistic, you almost feel the salt air just flying in your face. And part of the reason is that you feel that is that he had this method of absorbing whatever he was looking at. He wasn't painting it then, he was looking at it. And then when he, late years later, when he started to paint, he said, now I must put myself back at the source. I must I must feel the air, I must feel the salt air, I must hear the seagulls. So he was able to recall on purpose, I mean, all these emotions and feelings and tastes and smells, everything that would make these things so realistic. And people don't really know why, but everyone knows they really resonate with them for certain paintings more for certain people. My mother had this painting in her home, and she said, "I feel seasick sometimes when I look at it." Actually, it's she said if it's hung just at the right level, I'll feel seasick sometimes when I look at it.
It is.
And then the Cape Cod Museum, Maritime Museum, has this model, which we're very grateful to have, that Keith made. And this painting above it is written in the book, there's a story about it in the book. A student from Yale named Hale Whitcomb went into my grandfather's studio in New Haven in 1927 during his lunch hour. And my grandfather was painting this painting, and the whole story is written. But basically, Hale wanted to know if that was a rum runner, one of those boats, he said. Is that one of those boats that transports illegal bootleg liquor? My grandfather said, no, that's a Gloucester schooner. And he proceeded to tell him the whole story of the dories, the fishing, what they were doing, and how the waves were coming in, and the danger and everything. And Keith has backed it all up and said that he and his son have agreed that the details of the painting are very realistic and true to life. And that painting is owned by the grandson of the initial purchaser, and he lives in New Hampshire. This is a Cape Cod Museum painting here, beautiful sand dune with the light. It's magical, isn't it? It's magical. This is a Pam painting. We were trying to tie in the fishing industry as much as we could, and this is a scene of, it's not a Gloucester fisherman, it's probably a fisherman on the shore here outside of Provincetown, using nets and then bringing the fish in to take to market in the wagon. And this is called Playing in the Dock. It's one of his, it's quite illustrative. It's a genre scene. And it's these two girls that were probably sent down to the wharf to pick up a load of fish. They got a little careless. And the younger one probably slipped and spilled out some of the fish. And the fishermen are looking over at this lighthearted moment. My grandfather loved lightheartedness. He loved jokes. He loved stories. His mother was a novelist of like 52 romance novels, so he probably heard a lot of stories at home. And his paintings tell stories. So that's a very literal story, kind of. You can make it to what you want. This is a quieter scene, but it's the figures are so well drawn without any detail that you know exactly what they're doing. And they're true and anatomically correct. And it's just so pleasant to see the building. One of his signature things is that he has the darkest area in the painting, which would be in that door. The lightest thing is right in front. That's a pretty typical thing for an artist to do, but he does it quite well and quite often. This is another painting from Pam. Provincetown Museum of Art, an art association. It's so blue. I love the blues. Lots of atmosphere in that one too. And this is another one from this museum. And then we have seeing that he painted in London and one in Boston Common, and seeing from London, and one of these row houses down here is probably where he grew up. And then we have France over there, might be over him also, except for this thing here in the middle. It's painting of him, painting exactly where he was. He was in the Ford and Wallace department store in Springfield, Mass. So the department stores like having they felt like it brought in customers to the store, and they gave him space where he made a mock studio. So all during his life, he had these mock studios, because, like I said, Provincetown was only in the summer, he had to eat the rest of the year too. So, he would go in the winter time to the department store or to St. Augustine, and he was always painting for crowds. He loved it. And if you would take the time to look at the expression, those people, even the kids, even the baby, they're riveted on this man. They just can't wait to see. I mean, it's really worth taking a couple of minutes to look at the faces, because they're priceless. And he's painting it. And that hat was not for money. He didn't collect that. So it looks like a blanket, but we have this vase at home. I should have brought that, but I didn't. Are there any questions?
Isn't that painting, the painting of your father, wasn't there something special about that painting?
Well, my grandfather unfortunately had cancer, and some well-meaning doctor told him many years before that he should never have surgery, that his heart wasn't strong enough to withstand surgery. So he knew he was sick, but he didn't go and find out what it was. And by the time he was nearly dead, he had to go to the hospital. He couldn't eat anymore. It's all in the book. But they were in the car, ready to go to the Truesdale Hospital, which, by the way, the doctor who bought, I don't have those paintings here. They're in the book. The doctor, Dr. Truesdale, he started the Truesdale Hospital, and also he was a surgeon. But on the way to the hospital, my grandfather said, "Oops, wait a minute." He realized he didn't have a recent portrait of his son, who was 19 at the time. And they stopped everything, and he went in and got board and some brushes and painted that painting. It's really a sketch in 15 minutes. And there's a photograph of my father in the beginning of the book, and they look very similar. And then they went on to the hospital. And the hospital story, I think, is interesting, because nobody would do this today. A lot of things people did back in those days, nobody would do today. He took about 10 or 15 paintings to the hospital and put them up around the room. I don't know if they were able to hang some, but they put them up against the walls. And then when it came time to talk to Dr. Truesdale before he died, he said, well, there's the matter of the bill. And Dr. Truesdale says, well, I hate to discuss that, because he knew my grandfather was going to die. And he says, well, this is what I have. Choose one or two paintings. This is what I can pay you with. And so he chose to, I couldn't borrow those for the show, but they're in the book. And after he died, my grandmother and my father drove home and buried him in Bourne. And I wasn't born, and that was in 1929, and I wasn't born until 1947. I see I was born the same year Eldridge was born. Anyway, it's been a real happy process, and it's nice to share it with you all. Now you enjoy the things.
I had one more, yeah, well, definitely applause. Julie, you had mentioned that he painted under pseudonyms.
We don't know any of those names. But Cindy, we don't know any of those names. Cindy was always kind of sad that we couldn't ever find any of the older paintings, but we don't know any of those names.
So there's a chance that could you recognize it just by the style, potentially, even if it was signed by with a pseudonym?
Probably not, because I'll tell you, his style improved so vastly. I might not even want to recognize them, to be honest with you. He really got better as he went on. I guess most artists do. So I don't know. There are a lot of paintings that are really just classified as pot boilers out there that are signed by him. But these are quite high quality, I think, in here in this room.
So what's next for this collection of artwork? Is it going to go back to Arizona, or does it have a future?
Well, it definitely has a future. We just don't know what it is. It'd be nice to. My son has the idea of having an Arthur Diehl museum somewhere, but I don't have the money for something like that. If we all want to get together and do it, we can. It would be nice to have a collection together. I don't think there's probably any museum that's big enough to accept a collection like this. My family is going, I'm giving some to my family, and my brother owns a few of these. So we'll get together as a family. I was hoping to have a traveling show after this, but I could never get it together, so someday maybe. We'll keep working on it. Hopefully the book will draw more attention to it, and maybe some museum will even come to me, which would be nice. So.
Are there any other questions for Jeannie?
Oh, well, I thought this would be fun. He wrote this, he was very, very influenced by the First World War, because his family, he was English, and his family was all still there. His brother was in the war. And so he stopped selling paintings, closed his studio, stopped selling paintings, said, put your money in war bonds. Because he was very patriotic. And he made some posters about Liberty bonds. I think this painting over here on the right might have been the beginning of a study for a poster for enlisting in war, in English, maybe for English, Tommies they were called. And this painting is hysterical because the boy, it's almost like he's just trying to show the innocence. It's showing the innocence of the youth going to this war, like any war. And the cat, I think, has a little more of an idea of what's ahead. And then he wrote this book of poetry. It's in Cockney? I think it's Cockney English. It's very hard to read, but he had that published. And the expressions on the two, mother and the son trying to escape the bombing, is really frightening, but very true. And it's really sad because we're doing the same thing today. All around the world, nobody learns.
There's a question in the audience
Okay.
here. You have a question? Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about his training?
Training. Well, he went to various art schools in London. Heatherley's was one. I can't think of that way. Other art schools.
It's a long list of different schools.
But a lot of it had to do with copying. So training in those days, he didn't go to a formal school. He went to artist studios and that kind of thing. But his mother was at her wit's end. She didn't know what to do with him when he was 15. And so his father had a friend that they had both been in the Artist Corps of Rifles, which were artists that helped with the military somehow. I'm not quite sure that worked, but and he happened to be the head of the Royal Academy, Lord Leighton, and she was a little bit shy to call on him, but she got in touch with him, and he said he'd be very happy to give his advice for how to set his further training up if she would come on a Sunday afternoon to his studio and bring some examples of Arthur's work. So she packed up 2 paintings, and they went Sunday afternoon and unwrapped the 2 canvases with a little trepidation. And he looked at them both. He took one and stared at it for a long time and said, "However he painted that sky, I cannot imagine. I confess, I could not have done it." This is the head of art in England. They paint big painting, historical paintings and everything. So he said, but if his personality isn't such that he will take it seriously, it'll be a waste of time. Don't send him to the Royal Academy. There's too many years of boring work studying plaster casts. His personality won't, I don't think, will fit that. Send him to Italy by hook or by crook. So he sent him, and they found a family and found his artist. And he studied there for 2 years and traveled around, like I said, in other parts of Europe. And he copied a lot of paintings at the Berea Gallery there. So he wasn't self-taught. He had teachers, and he copied a lot.
Do you know what his personality was like? Showman with a paintbrush. Did he engage his audience and then try to hustle the painters? What was the experience like, do you know, for those people who were there?
Well, he was English, so he was older than a lot of the people. He was one of the older artists, and he had a wonderful sense of humor, and he was lighthearted, and he worked very hard. He was a gentleman. He was polite. He would never do anything mean, say anything mean. He liked to have a joke, and he liked to laugh, but he would never do anything that would be rude to anybody. And so he was different. I mean, some of the art students at some of the schools, the young kids, you know, come up here from wherever they came from, had heard stories about him, and so sometimes they would come over to his studio and say, "Well, you just don't." They were into the Impression, not even more than Impressionists, the later art, the Expressionists, and more. And they would actually say to him, "You don't paint like we do because you can't." And he said, "You know, I think I could paint any way I wanted to, and I'll show you." So he went in back in the studio. He says, "Just wait here a minute." And he went and got a couple little canvases, and he painted some very abstract wharf scene and a woman painting in an easel. Which I didn't bring here because I wanted the real professional good stuff. It's interesting, but I didn't want that much. It's been seen before, so. And then, you know, he would paint those. So he could have done it, but he didn't want to. He was old-fashioned. He didn't move ahead. He stayed where he was, but he was very friendly. People absolutely loved him.
Jeannie, how about there's a story you tell about how he would engage with his patrons by giving them participation in what he's going to paint.
Well, he would ask them to, in the beginning, he had a little dial that he used sometimes. I used to have it, but I've lost it, unfortunately. It was a little card. He loved dials. And it was like a 3x5 card with 2 dials. One was locations, like London, Paris, whatever. The other was weather conditions. So he would say to somebody, "Well, take my dial and dial the dials and come up with something." So they might come up with London in the fog, or some Italy on the coast in the sun, whatever. And he would say, "Okay, well, that's fine, I'll paint that." And he did talk to the people while he was painting, and he would tell them exactly what he was doing. And he had there were a lot of newspaper reporters that went there and took notes and wrote articles. There are quite a few articles about what they saw when they went there. And then they would all say, and they were very worthwhile paintings. Yes, he talked, and he talked about philosophy, he talked about history, he talked about chemistry, he talked about the kings and queens of Europe. But he also talked about what he was doing, each step by step. And he was also a very good pianist, because his mother was too. And he learned quite young to play beautifully. If he had a piano in his studio, which he did often, say in those department stores, his little studio on Commercial Street did not have a piano in it. But he would get up and play some songs. Sometimes he even sang a little bit. He was just totally outgoing. I mean, friendly, down to earth, but loving. I mean, he could, not only could he see scenes of like a windmill with flowers in front of it and get the essence, or the ocean. He looked at people and he got their essence too. And he could tell, I mean, he was, he could read people very well. My mother met him when she was 18 out on the street in Provincetown, and she had just met my father a few weeks before, and they were both 18. And she was walking down this commercial street and she saw my grandfather come out of his studio, and she was just a young, fun, loving, beautiful woman. And she said, "Oh, you must be Arthur's father, you look so much like him." And he said, "Yes, you must be Joy. And would you care to come along with us? We're just on our way to the laundry to drop off the clothes." And she got in the back seat, and my grandmother drove, and my grandfather would have never said anything in front of his wife, but when she got out of the car and went into the laundry, he turned to my mother, having never met her, she'd never met him. He said to her, "I wish you would marry my son." And she was sort of flabbergasted. She says, "Why do you think your son would want to marry me?" He said, "My son loves you. I know my son, and he will never change." And he saw that in his son's face. Maybe all parents can see that, I don't know. Maybe kids don't hide, maybe my father didn't hide it like some kids try to. I don't know, but sure enough, they were 18 and they weren't able to marry until they were 35. And they actually still got 50 years of marriage out of that. And my father adored my mother. So my grandfather's right. He saw people, he saw things. I think he could tell that you have expression in the cat. Anyone else?
Do you know when he was in Provincetown, did he associate with a lot of contemporary artists, either the painters or even the theater folks and so on?
Actually, he was very busy. He didn't really associate with, I told you he associated with all the tradespeople, drugstores, doctors, the things. But as far as the artists, he was really busy. And he wasn't into the new movement. He was an old-timer and set in his ways. He knew what he was doing. He knew what he wanted to do. You know, Impressionism was quite big. And some of his paintings look impressionistic, and most of you would probably say, "Oh, that's an impressionistic painting." But he did not consider himself an impressionist. And so he didn't really associate with people that were doing things that he wasn't doing. I mean, he was busy. He was making a living. And that's what he did many, many hours every day. But in my feeling about his painting is that they're impressionistic in the way that they give an impression, but not in the sense of the light and the way the French impressionists were really looking for the light and they did. I can't specifically say what it is because I'm getting tired.
So, as with all of our exhibitions, there will be a selection of classes offered in concert with it. We have the first up, a paint night, where we're going to paint one of the paintings that we have in the museum's permanent collection with Michael Giaquinto. So you can try your hand at painting like Diehl on June 21st. There's also an more in-depth discussion of Showman with a Paintbrush, the life and art of Arthur E. Diehl, and a book signing. with Regina Diehl, and that's on June 27th at 2 p.m. So if this piques your interest, you can learn more. And then Paul Moore is offering a class on classical approach to portrait and figure drawing. Students will learn the mechanical nuts and bolts of drawing and the mental aspects of seeing, understanding, and interpreting how the light around us describes what we see. And that's an aspect that was critical to Arthur Diehl's own work. And that's July 6th through the 27th, 4 Saturdays. Well, finally, I'd like to thank Eldred's Auctioneers again for sponsoring this exhibition, Cindy Nickerson for bringing this exhibition possibility to my attention, Lisa Pluth for co-editing a biography with Cindy, and thank you once more to Jeannie and her family for providing the context and perspective needed to make this exhibition come to life. You can purchase the books in our gift shop, and Jeannie is available to sign the books as you, if she's not sitting and signing, you can approach her and she would be happy to do that. So enjoy the exhibition and the rest of your evening, and I think there's something that we can all be, you could be very proud of here. It's a gorgeous show.
Thank you.